You are listening to Brave Talk Radio. You're just in time to join today's Brave Conversations with your hosts, Jackie Little Guest, Deryl Williams, and Toni Emehel.
You can tell the truth. It's Brave Talk Radio. It's Brave Talk Radio.
It's Brave Talk Radio. All right, so when we left off in last week's discussion on colorism, we were talking about the fact that back in the 1600s and before the 1600s, when blacks, African Americans, people of color we lived in our own societies in such a way that we were proud of who we were. We actually lived in accordance with the royal priesthood that had been handed down to us from our God. So when the 1600s came and people decided to try and own us and consider us inhumane for economic reasons and for their economic gain, they took our humanism away from us. We weren't even considered as humans. We were considered as chattel. We were considered as a thing to be owned, a means to an end, a means for economic growth. So in doing that, they did a work on our mind to cause us to feel inferior, to cause us to no longer appreciate ourselves and who we are, and to make us second-guess the people that God had created us to be. And then we move forward to the time when slaves were emancipated, where people of color were emancipated. And they emancipated us physically, but they left us enslaved in our minds, which led us to where we are now. So we fought for civil rights, and that's been a short 50 years ago. We have the civil rights now, and as Deryl brought out with the readings that he did on last week, how there's no right that a black man has that a white man shall honor.
Yeah, that comes from two sources, actually. There was a guy that when the African continent was being invaded and destroyed by the European colonial powers, his name was Louis Benjer. You can find this information in Dr. Chancellor Williams' book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, a great book. He said that the black man, and he said this on the African continent, as they were going in and destroying African nations and African civilizations, that the black man had no rights, that the white man was bound to respect. And then in the Dred Scott case, the Supreme Court ruled, and that was, I believe, in 1855, the Supreme Court ruled at that time that black people or African descendants had no rights that white people were bound to respect. So it comes from two sources, historically, that I'm aware of.
So where we find ourselves now as a people, as a race, is in a position where subtly the media, print media, social media, the media on television, anything that is in media, and I know, Deryl, you had mentioned the quote, "He who controls the printed page controls the thinking." We're in a position now where our thinking has been put in a state of being controlled by others so subtly that we don't realize the influences that we're under. So in retrospect, what it causes is, or the consequence of it, is that cognitive distancing that causes you to distance yourself from the reality of what's really going on. So let's talk about that.
Well, it's a psychosis. It's a psychosis. And it's a paralysis of analysis. When you don't have correct information, when you've been cut off from your history, when you've been cut off from your languages, when you've been cut off from your religion, when everything has been taken from you and you've been reduced and dehumanized down to nothing, and someone presents information to you to the contrary that says that you're not the tail, but you are the head, that you are a chosen generation in a royal priesthood, you can hear that over and over and over again and not understand what's being said or where the source of that information emanates from. You're clueless. And that's what causes cognitive dissonance, in so much as when people are presented with information that would uplift them both mentally, spiritually, from the standpoint of self-esteem, from a community regard, and as much as loving their community, there's this willingness to be dedicated. Listen to what I'm getting ready to say. Dedicated to the ignorance. We have a lot of people that are dedicated to ignorance and not embracing or attaching themselves to the facts. And people are more comfortable being dedicated to ignorance because they don't know what the facts are. They have done no research. No one has presented it to them. And even in our school system, some of the things that we're talking about now, bravely, are not discussed in the school system. And I remember when I was in the 10th grade, I went to an all-white school, Chamberlain High School in Tampa, Florida. And at the time, I'm dedicated to ignorance. I'm a young 16, 17-year-old child who had never been exposed to half of the stuff we're talking about. And it was required at that school that we take African and African studies, and none of us wanted to. I didn't want to because at that time in my life, I knew nothing positive about African Americans or Africans. I didn't want to learn that. And when we went to class, the teacher, she did all in her power, that she could, rather, to try to compel us to sit down and listen and learn about who we really were. And I had no interest in that. I wanted to be the next Dr. J. I wanted to be what I saw on television, because television, the purpose of television is to program the mind. And if all you see on television is Dr. J or the athlete or the entertainer or the thug or the pimp or the hustler or the prostitute or the Uncle Tom, or if these are the only characters you see when someone comes to you and starts talking about Marcus Garvey or Denmark Vesey or Gabriel Prosser or Ida B. Wells Barnett or Fannie Lou Hamer or Daisy Bates or Gloria Allrich or Malcolm X or Henry Highland Garnett or Absalom Jones or Richard Allen. I can go on and on and on. I had to learn this on my own. Lewis Howard Latimer, Peter Salem, Salem Poor, Crispus Attucks, Benjamin Banneker, Garrett Morgan. When someone starts talking to you about these people, which you've never seen this on television, and your preacher has never preached it from his pulpit, you don't want to hear that. You think that that's a farce. That's where the cognitive dissonance comes from, and that's where the dedication to ignorance comes from. And I want to clarify one last thing, because y'all know I talk too much. I'm going to shut it off today. I said that Black History Month is a joke. Half of the names I just mentioned, again, are never mentioned, are never spoken to. We're never told anything positive about who we are, I mentioned Benjamin Banneker. Do you know that we wear watches, wristwatches on our wrist today, and it was Benjamin Banneker who invented the first clock in this country? He also was responsible for the first almanac. He used to stay up at night reading the stars, and he, like our ancestors used to in Africa, and he came up with the first almanac, the very same almanac that's being used today to tell us when the seasonal changes are going to occur. No one knows that. When I say Lewis Howard Latimer, do you know that Lewis Howard Latimer was the person that patented the filament that goes in the light bulb, that lights up the light bulb, so that when you turn your light switch on, you're able to illuminate your house or your room or your residence? That Lewis Howard Latimer was responsible for that. Do you know that every time you're in a car and you stop at a stoplight, that light was invented by Garrett Morgan? People don't understand that most of the tools, and this is the other thing about slavery, we got to get this in here. When they kidnapped and stole our ancestors from Africa and brought us here as slaves and put all that 3/5 of a man stuff in there and did everything they could do to dumb us down and make us ignorant and stupid, there were specific slaves that the slave masters on these plantations wanted. The architects, the engineers, the carpenters, the blacksmiths, the metal workers. Those were the prime people that were brought over here as slaves, because you got to remember, this country was built by us. They call us lazy today and all this kind of stuff, and won't even teach us or allow us to learn trades today. But initially, when we first came over here, we were the ones that built the big house. We were the ones that built the shanty, Washington, D.C. All of that was, and as a matter of fact, the plans for the building of Washington, D.C. came from Benjamin Banneker. See, that's where cognitive dissonance comes in. We've never heard this. No one's ever taught us this. We think that we're, Kevin Hart. We think that we're LeBron James. We think that we're Russell Westbrook, who walks around dressing like a girl now. We think that we're Jaden Smith, who's now a model for a woman's apparel company. Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, a model for a female apparel company. We think that that's who we are. But when you talk about Amhotep, who built the first step pyramid in Egypt, and those pyramids are still standing today, and people can't figure out how we did that. And they even make up lies saying aliens did that now. Yeah, aliens that look like us.
But you make a very valid point, because I know for my personally, when growing up, when I heard the word Africa, I'm thinking Zulu. I'm thinking people running around half naked, dirty, starving, with fear, killing. That is the Africa that I saw. That is the Africa.
And where did you get that from? Where did you get that from, Jackie? Yeah, from Tarzan, from television.
Looking at television. Tarzan, this is what I saw. And, I always saw the negative side of, or she had to be the maid, or she had to be the mama. Those are the ones that I saw. She was always something working for. I got to go and cook and clean for. I got to scrub the toilet for. That is when I grew up. So if no one ever taught me anything, or I didn't try to find it out for myself, then that's what I'm going to teach my child. And it's going to go on and on. And then when the light bulb comes on to one of them, now, look, Mom, look, Grandma, great-grandma, we don't have to live like this. This is how we can live. This is who we are. Now we're looking back like, oh, you think you better than us.
Exactly.
You got it going on.
Preach, Jackie.
But, now you think you all that, you bougie now.
Preach, Jackie.
Really. So this is, like I said, you make a valid point. And, you're telling people, look what we have accomplished. Okay, so we've accomplished that. But now it has been so long, like you've heard so many times. If you take a dog and you chain that dog to that tree, and when you, for years, and you finally say go, that dog will be like, no, this is what I know, and this is what I'm going to stick to. I can care less what's going on. And we have gotten to such a society, unfortunately, even with our people, it's about me and mine, and that's it. As long as we're living good, I can care less about Benjamin Banneker and this and that. I can care less about the past. I live for today. What's happening today with me? Am I living good? Yes, I am. So I can care less about all those other people. So we hear about Martin Luther King, we blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. But it's all because of what we did not know, what we were not taught, that we have brought forward. It's unfortunate, but it's realistic.
It's realistic, but this is a Christian talk show, so let's bring the Bible in. The Bible says, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. But we can stop at I can do all things. Now, I'm going to tie Marcus Garvey in with that to make it relevant. Marcus Garvey said, whatever one man has done, another one can do. All right? So it is relevant. If we built pyramids before, if we built civilizations before, if we have been and are some super intelligent people that were able not only to build civilizations, but build advanced, super sophisticated civilizations. We did it before. There's something inside of us that is dormant. There's something, greater is he that is in me. There's something inside of us that is dormant, that causes us to want to be comfortable, thinking that, okay, I got a house, I got a car, I'm good. Until we get that what I call Negro wake-up call. And I've gotten mad a couple of times. I drive a Mercedes, and it ain't a brand new Mercedes, but I've been pulled over a few times. And the cops are back here in Charlotte. Is this your car? Can we search your car? I'm not even doing anything. I got my seatbelt on. I'm driving. I'm not driving above the speed limit. Not blasting my music. Just a black man riding through the streets of Charlotte, pulled over because of the car I'm driving. That's the Negro wake-up call. So it is relevant. It is relevant. And we talk about things that we have done that have been destroyed. We talk about emancipation. We never really were emancipated because right after emancipation, you had the sharecropping system. And most of the Africans that were free went right back to the same plantations that they were freed from. They didn't know anything else. And set up a sharecropping system with their masters where the masters got most of the profits and just gave them just enough to live off of, just like on the chattel slavery plantation or that system. It was no different. Then you had the Jim Crow scenario, which is pretty much the same thing. I can break that down, too, because I've done the research on that, too. We have, and I think I quoted John Henry Clark in our last broadcast where he said history is never old. It just repeats itself in another form. You had chattel slavery, then you had sharecropping, then you had Jim Crow. But in spite of all of that, that African genius, that original African genius will always shine through. Most people don't know about Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was called Black Wall Street. Before they started calling it Black Wall Street, it was called Little Africa. It was a town, and I've been there. See, I do my research for real. I've been to Tulsa, Oklahoma. When I took my family there, I didn't tell them I was taking them there to see what my ancestors built that great empire at that was destroyed. And they talked this, the greatest act of terrorism in America was when that federal building got bombed up by Timothy McVeigh. That's one of the biggest lies going. The greatest act of terrorism in this country was when Black Wall Street was so prosperous and the whites were so jealous because these were former slaves. They owned all the businesses. They were everything that we did in Africa, we were doing in Tulsa. We owned all the business. We were building up all these structures, doing what we naturally do when we're left alone and we have nobody else to turn to but ourselves. They built a great city and the whites were jealous. So they trumped up this little situation, I think, where they said some white guy whistled at a white girl. And just like the movie Rosewood was another town that was black-owned. The people were proud. They had their own city. They had their own town. They had everything. And they came up with these little trumped-up reasons to go in and literally destroy the town and kill all the people. That was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921, by the way. And Rosewood was not too long after that. I think it was 1929. The same thing happened. And there have been townships all over this country where black people just got together and said, okay, we're going to build. We're not going to work for the system anymore. We're not going to be these pseudo-slaves anymore. We're going to build our own town, create our own infrastructure, politically, economically, spiritually, and otherwise. And they did it. And in every case in this country, they were destroyed. Tulsa was bombed. That was the first time in this country that planes flew over an American city and bombed it. They bombed it. They destroyed it. So that African genius let me just say this, that African genius that we brought over with us on the slave ship is still inside of us. It's still there. There you go.
Okay. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you speak of the African genius that's inside of us. What is stopping the black man, the African American, the African, whatever you want to call us, what is stopping us from using that now? Why can't we build our own community? What is the reason that we don't do it today?
Oh, it's not stopping us. In Detroit right now, see, he who controls the printed page controls the thinking of the age. There are places in Atlanta that I've been black-owned. There's a completely black-owned mall in Toni. I've been to. It's wonderful, but you never hear about it. You know, you're not going to, CNN and Fox and ABC and NBC are not going to broadcast that. There's an African mall, African-American mall that just opened in Colorado. Did you know that? No, you're not going to know that. In Detroit, Michigan right now, Dr. Claude Anderson and a group of businessmen, they own this production company where they're producing everything. And it's like a big, huge black business consortium. See, Fox ain't going to tell you that. NBC is not going to tell you that. ABC is not going to tell you that. CNN is not going to tell you that. He who controls the printed page, and I gave you all the U.S. patent numbers for television. That's mind control. If I want to control your mind and get you to think that you're nothing, and get you to think that black people aren't doing anything together, I'm never going to pop. I'll show you Magic Johnson's son walking around with mascara on and eyeliner on and pumps, and I'll show you him talking to make you think all black men are effeminate now. I'll show you Russell Westbrook walking into a basketball game dressed like a girl, and I'll talk about Jaden Smith, but I'm not going to talk about Dr. Claude Anderson. I'm not going to talk about Dr. Umar Johnson. There are black people all over this country doing exactly what you just said, trying to build an infrastructure where we can provide for ourselves, but you never hear about it. That's a myth. It's a myth that we don't work together. It's a myth that we don't come together. We are attending a church right now that's pastor, I'll say his name, Dr. Michael Anthony Stevens. Like him or dislike him. What he's trying to do with this, there's a bonding program that he's introducing where wealth could be transferred back to the people. Debt-free program. There's only two pastors I've seen in America that have done that. Dr. Stevens is now one, and there was a pastor in Arkansas, all-black congregation in Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, right across the street from the University of Arkansas. I know because I went there. They had a debt-free program. So you got people that are doing it, but we never hear about it. And because we never hear about it, and our minds are controlled and our behavior is controlled by television, by Housewives of Atlanta or whatever them shows is called, Hollywood Divas, all of this foolishness and garbage. If you allow that stuff to influence you and control you, then as a man thinketh, so is he. If you think that's all there is and you think that's how we are, then of course you're going to have this mindset that says that we don't come together and we don't build. There are black people all over America that I know that are doing it. They're black-owned businesses, and most of them operate independently.
Well, I just need to do some research, huh?
Oh, yeah, do some research, baby, because they're out there. There's a huge black business directory. You can get it on Facebook. And see, here's the thing with me. I only deal with people on Facebook that think like I do. And when they post things that I think people need to know, I'm going to post. That's the information that I post. Some of these crimes, horrific crimes that are being committed against our people all over the country that CNN and Fox and all these people aren't talking about, when my Facebook friends found out about it, they put it on Facebook, I repost it. So I'm trying to get the word out. When the African Mall that started in Colorado first came out a couple of weeks ago and the information came out, there was actually a video post on it showing all these black, and they call it the African market because it's not African per se in that it's modeled after, a country or anywhere in Africa. They call it that because we're considered, all of us, and those of you who don't know this, National Security Memorandum 46 delineates in America and on the African continent as African. So that's why we call ourselves African. That's what they call us. That's what we call us. And so they call it the African Mall. That information came out on Facebook. If there are other independently owned black social media sites, and I'm a part of 3 of them that are black owned, where people advertise their business, they advertise their politics. If you want to get on board with them, they allow you to sign up and allow you to be in the know on a lot of this stuff. But because we rely on white-dominated mainstream media that for the most part is responsible for all the negative stereotypes about black people, if that's what you rely on solely, you'll never know.
Let me interject here because, I know I do at times. I will always give people the benefit of the doubt until they show me that I need to treat or honor them in a different way. So when it comes to patronizing black-owned businesses and organizations and the like, I am going to be at the forefront to, give my brother, my sister a chance. But when it comes down to the level of service sometimes that we get from these black-owned organizations, the level of service, and particularly for me, is the customer service. It's almost like sometimes you're going into a war zone dealing with them because they're, again, and I'm not going to say of no fault of their own, but everyone is in reactive mode. So because someone has either mishandled them in the past or because of some past experience, they sometimes have their defenses up. So here you are, you're walking in, you're trying to patronize, and you are expecting excellence in treatment, excellence in product, and then they give you something that's substandard and then look at you like it's your fault. Now, again, I'm not going to speak in general terms, but I do second guess a lot of times when I'm dealing with some of these organizations as to what's going to be the level of customer service I'm going to get when a mishap occurs. And I think that a lot of that is because people are still operating under that enslaved mind, that entrapped mind. So we still don't fully trust one another. And it's hard to be vulnerable to one another because of the works that have been done on us in the past. And then also you can go into a black-owned establishment and you can go into the same type of establishment owned by a Jewish man or a white man or an Asian man, and you'll find that the prices are different. It's always higher when you go into African-American-owned store than it is in some of the other stores that are owned by other races. And that's because the African-American has to buy it. I mean, they can't price point it at the same rate sometimes as their counterparts can from other races.
Higher overhead. Yeah, higher overhead prices.
Exactly. So it's not that and again, if you don't know that back end of what this person has had to go through, I mean, nobody's willingly opening any doors. So
there's two dynamics that work there, though.
Yeah,
there's two dynamics.
Yeah, they're not a part of the good old boy, network. So they're paying retail while other folks are paying wholesale. And when we go in to patronize them, we're paying higher prices for something that we could go across the street and get it from Billy Bob's at a lower price.
And that is so true, Toni. That is so true. I had a conversation with someone about that several years ago. And we were in a deep debate about that. And I told him, I said, you know, when you go to a black-owned place, you pay a little more than you would for our counterparts. And he's like, that's because it's by choice. And I told him, no, it's not by choice. It's because we as black people have to, the owner of the store or whatever, we have to pay a higher price for what we get, because a lot of times we can't just go and get this stuff on credit. We got to pay out of pocket. Or, you know, it's different for us because, I mean, you've seen over the years, and it's well known that when we get something and we, you know, like a house, and it's been documented that the credit rate is higher for us.
Those are Jim Crow laws, by the way. Those are modern-day Jim Crow laws.
As business owners try to buy these things, we got to buy it at a higher rate. So I'm trying to make a little something, so I got to charge you a little bit more. And he, as a black man, said, no, that is not so. I don't believe that. And he said, this is why I don't shop in my own people's stores, because I have to pay more. And I said, if we would just stop and look and say, okay, you know what? I understand why I'm paying a little bit more. So if we continue to shop at that store and we're getting the customer service that we are supposed to get, then they can bring their prices down because they're getting the business.
They're getting the volume. Business
exactly.
Volume.
Well, here's what I would say about that. Here's what I would say. I don't care about none of that. Me personally, I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and the prices were higher. But the woman that raised me, because she raised me to be proud, and she was proud, she wasn't going to shop anywhere else but with her own kind. That's where I get that from. So we went there. Here's the thing, though. I told you that the woman that raised me commanded respect, and I do it. And I'm teaching Destiny this now, too. When we go in a store and it's black-owned and the people are acting fine, I'll let them know, look, man, I'm in here shopping. I've done it. Hey, if you expect me to come back here, if you expect me to shop here, then act like you're glad to see me. Y'all know I'm crazy, and I talk just like that, too. I don't miss my words. And I have found that in doing that, in commanding respect, I go, once I make that point to them, they jump through the hoop. I mean, just walk out. Every time they see me come in the store now, they jump because they... Let me
just stop you there. Let me just stop you there. And that may be okay for you, but and it may be even effective for you as a man dealing with another man, or as a man dealing with another woman. But from my experience in dealing with a lot of other black women, we don't respect one another. Because
you didn't let me finish.
No, we are still operating under that Willie Lynch syndrome and that Jim Crow syndrome. I know, because I know where it comes from. And that's why in the small circle of women that I deal with, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it proudly and boldly, not necessarily proudly, but sadly, but boldly, that I can't put a name on a woman from a different race that has treated me as illy or as badly as a black woman in my own race has treated me. I've never been more disrespected by a woman of another race than that of the hands of other black women that I've had to encounter throughout this time in my life. All of the maltreatment that I can put my finger on that's most memorable to me was wielded at the hand of a black woman. So,
I agree. I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
I agree with you. I understand where you're coming from. And we should not have to go into the store because, as Toni said, that works for you. But when you're dealing with another black woman, it's not as easy to go into there and say, look, you know, hey, you're going to treat me because she has attitude, and it's not all black women. So for those of you who are listening, I'm not saying all black women are like that, but we have a lot of them like that. That, you know, she has an attitude where you don't have to, oh, yes, you're right, I don't have to patronize you. But if you want to be successful, then come on, act like it. Treat me like you would your white customers. I should not have to come into your restaurant and I ask for this. We ain't got none. Can I have that? We ain't got no more. Can I have?
Okay, well, can you give me some options? Can you give me some options, sis?
I mean, here it is, and I've been there. This restaurant open, black-owned, trying to patronize them. And I go in there, and everything I ask for, we don't have any. So, honey, you need to take your sign down because everything I've asked you for, you don't have. So what do you have? This is all we got. Where's your professionalism?
Well, yeah, a lot of times I just, and again, I'm speaking from my experience, and like Jackie qualified earlier, it's not every woman. But I think that in our race of women, we are the ones who particularly have problems with stereotypes. And I decided in my mind a long time ago, even when I was in grade school, that I would not live up to the stereotype of the kind of woman that they expected all black women to be, all black women to have an attitude, women not being able to get along with one another, black women not being able to work together to be successful, black women not being able to network together because someone is always going to have to try and be the lead or be the boss or be the this or the that. And I particularly find that women who carry titles tend to wield their title more than they do the function in which they carry the title for. So that title now becomes the important focus, and if you can't refer to them by that title, then they have a problem. Perhaps some of that comes from the house nigga versus the field nigga. Okay.
Toni, now. You're in my head now. Come on now.
Yeah, I'm just because that's where it's coming from. And when you look at the essence of title, when people put that much emphasis on title, what they're really grasping for is an entitlement. See, that's what the house niggas were grasping for, was that entitlement to be in the house to eat from master's table. Now, see, I eat from my master's table every day. It don't matter where I am or what you call me. I'm going to eat from his table.
I want to feel important.
Yeah, I mean, anytime. Yeah, when Judgment Day comes, God, there's not going to be a looking on the roll for a title in front of your name. It's going to be your name is what's going to carry. But every time people start wielding that, have to be called by a title, what they're really saying is, I'm yearning for the entitlements that are attached to this title, and that's more important to me.
And that's
what we got to remember, though.
That's house nigga versus field nigga syndrome.
Yeah, we've had 600 plus years of self-hating, self-contempt psychology programming that we've all undergone from the printed page and television. So yeah, you're going to encounter and you said it very well said. I was going to go there, but and Malcolm X did a very good job in the 60s of talking about the house Negro versus the field Negro and the attitudes and the attendant behaviors that one had versus the other. And then you have the Willie Lynch speech where it talks about pitting people getting together, straight hair against coarse hair, light skin against dark skin. All of this stuff was to program us to always be in contention with each other. The crabs in the barrel. And we talk about crabs in the barrel, but we never talk about who invented the barrel. Where did the barrel come from? How did we get in that barrel? And that's where I went in our last discussion about etiology. We need to look at some causes. And here's the thing, too. I want to go back to patronizing businesses. Now, there are times when I talk to people and I let them know, hey, man, I'm up in here. You know, I don't have to be here. And sometimes they don't change. I remember going to Barbados, and every store I went in Barbados, this is 1991, I'm in Barbados, and I'm there shopping, and and all the businesses were operated at least by black Barbadians, and they treated me vitriolically everywhere I went. And in every case, I talked to them at first. I was like, hey, and they didn't want to act right. I was with someone at the time. I said, let's go. I ain't buying nothing in here. And at one point, I was so frustrated with just see, Denmark Vesey said it best. He said, if you let a man treat you like a nigga, then you deserve it. So I don't let people treat me any old kind of way. When I see that they're not going to relent, they're not going to change, I don't have to stay there and contend with them. I don't have to shop. I don't have to buy. I leave. And that's what I did. So, yeah, I'm not saying be so tolerable to the point where you're willing to contend with someone else's ignorance and malice that's not even deserved. But understand, there's been a 600-year and running anti-black, self-hatred psychological program that's been in effect in this country. So it's almost surprising sometimes when you go someplace. And, again, the other side of it, too, as far as patronizing businesses, a lot of our African-American or African-owned businesses now are online. I shop a lot online. I have stuff sent to my house. I don't have to deal with a lot of stuff. There's a lot going on where people are trying to get it together and trying to come together and trying to change this self-hatred, because that's what's driving this. We don't want to do business with each other, even in our churches. I didn't want to go here, but it's very prevalent in black churches. I've seen the Hatfields and McCoys, including the church I'm at now. I've seen it everywhere I have gone, where you have this person, and it's subtle. You know, people, they pretend, and they go through the hypocrisy game, or they play that game, but it's very prevalent. You can't go through 600-plus years of that type of programming and go to church and it not be, extra there as well. It's in the church, too.
Well, let me just say this, and we are out of time. We're fresh out of time. We're probably
part four.
We are over. But what I do want to clarify, those who are listening and may feel somewhat offended, or as the young people say, feeling some kind of way, or you're in your feelings right now because we use the N-word and express it. You know, that is a word that is a part of our past. It is a part of our history. And I don't want anybody to go away from this broadcast thinking that we were calling people that. Rather, we were focusing on and drawing attention to the historical use and what it looked like in our lives today. So, that being said, it's Brave Talk Radio, and we're signing out.
Part 4 next week. Be here.
All right.
You are listening to Brave Talk Radio at ToniEmehel.com.
This is Deryl Williams of Brave Talk Radio, and I'm coming at you today with a Black History moment. Today we'll be talking about Lewis Howard Latimer. Lewis Howard Latimer was born in Chelsea, Massachusetts on September 4, 1848, the youngest of 5 children of Rebecca Latimer, 1826 through 1910, and George Latimer, 1818 through 1896. George Latimer had been a slave of James B. Gray of Virginia. George Latimer ran away to freedom in Boston, Massachusetts in October 1842, along with his mother Rebecca, who had been the slave of another man. When Gray, the owner, appeared in Boston to take them back to Virginia, it became a noted case in the movement for the abolition of slavery, gaining the involvement of such abolitionists as William Lloyd Garrison. Eventually, funds were raised to pay Gray $400 for the freedom of George Latimer. Lewis Latimer joined the U.S. Navy at the age of 15, September 16, 1863, and served as a landsman on the USS Massasoit. After receiving an honorable discharge from the Navy on July 3, 1865, he gained employment as an office boy with a patent law firm, Crosby, Harrstead, and Gould, with a $3 a week salary. He learned how to use a set square, ruler, and other tools. Later, after his boss recognized his talent for sketching patent drawings, Latimer was promoted to the position of head draftsman, earning $20 a week by 1872. In 1874, he co-patented with Charles Brown an improved toilet system for railroad cars, called the water closet for railroad cars, U.S. patent number 147363. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell employed Latimer, then a draftsman at Bell's patent law firm, to draft the necessary drawings required to receive a patent for Bell's telephone. In 1879, he moved to Bridgeport, Connecticut with his brother William, his mother Rebecca, and his wife Mary. Other families, his brother George A. Latimer and his wife Jane, and his sister Margaret and her husband Augustus T. Harley, and their children were already living there. Lewis was hired as an assistant manager and draftsman for the U.S. Electric Lighting Company, a company owned by Hiram Maxim and a rival of Thomas A. Edison. Latimer received a patent in January 1881 for the process of manufacturing carbon, an improved method for the production of carbon filaments used in light bulbs. And it was through this patent that Lewis Howard Latimer and Thomas Edison was able to light up the world. This has been a Black History Moment with yours truly, Deryl Williams from BraveTalk Radio.
Hi, this is Toni Emehel. You know, in the book of Ephesians, the Apostle Paul exhorted Ephesian believers to see prayer as a weapon to use in fighting spiritual battles. Are you fighting any spiritual battles today? Satan wants you to feel that you're all alone and that nobody cares about you or your situation. But he could be no further away from the truth. We are here for you. Join us for prayer during a weekly prayer call each Sunday at 8:30 p.m. This prayer call has two specific objectives. Our first objective is to bind the hand of the enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy you. Our second objective is to pray for God's covering and His protection over you as you go about the duties of your week. So join us each week, each Sunday at 8:30 p.m. by dialing 518-530-1840. That number again is 518-530-1840. You will be asked to enter an access ID, and the access ID is 211-341-648.
Today's broadcast has been brought to you by Next Level Plus Project Management and Business Consultants. Learn more about how Next Level Plus can help you solve the right problems and seize the right opportunities by calling 704-780-2997 or visit their website at nextlevelplus.org.